All right, everyone, it is 7 p.m. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you to everybody that's here and online. We are going to start with our newly elected board members. I would like the three of you to please stand, Janelle, David, and Leo.
You should have a sheet of paper in front of you for what we're going to read.
There'll be a sheet of paper which will read together. Is everybody ready?
Yeah, both parts.
Okay. I hereby accept the
We're supposed to talk.
Let's start over. I hereby accept the office of school board member of the Independent School District number 2165 for a term beginning January 8th, 2024 and expiring January 3rd, 2028. I swear, affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of this state, and that I will discharge faithfully the duties of the office of the school board member of Independent School District number 2165 to the best of my judgment and ability. Congratulations, and thank you for serving our school board.
Thank you.
Next up, agenda approval. I am looking for a motion. Oh, wait, is there any corrections, additions?
I had two additions in the consent agenda under resignations, and then I had a correction a little further down in the two dates I had proposed for a work session. We cannot have a meeting on January 15th because that's Martin Luther King Day, so I have that crossed off.
All right, does anybody have any questions regarding those changes? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is officer elections. We have one open, which is vice chair, and then we re-elect chair, clerk, and treasurer. The current officers are chair Jody, vice chair open, clerk Dave, and treasurer Leo. Officers must be elected by majority unless there is only one nomination, then the person elected by acclamation. We'll have roll call vote if there's multiple nominations taken. For office of chair, are there any nominations?
For chair, I nominate Jody Storley.
Second that.
For office of chair, are there any more nominations? For office of chair, are there any more nominations? All right, so now we vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is Jody. Next up is vice chair. I am looking for a nomination for vice chair. I nominate Angela.
Second that.
For office of vice chair, are there any more nominations? For office of vice chair, are there any more nominations? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Angela is vice chair. For the office of clerk, are there any nominations?
I nominate Dave Oval.
I'll second.
For the office of clerk, are there any more nominations? For the office of clerk, are there any more nominations? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? David is the clerk. For office of treasurer, are there any nominations?
Oh, nominate Leo.
For the office of treasurer, are there any more nominations? For the office of treasurer, are there any more nominations? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Leo is the treasurer. Thank you. Dave and Leo. Please don't leave after the meeting. We'll need signatures again, I guess. All right, next up is committee list. With Shelley leaving, there are a few open spots on our committee list. There has been some discussion regarding having 3 members on a committee. If we feel it's necessary or not. It was never like that, and then I think a few years ago, about 3 years ago, it kind of changed, but we don't have to keep it that way. So what we are filling tonight would be okay. So we would be filling comparable work, MSBA, evaluation, the Communication, Retention, and Climate Committee, and teacher negotiations. So, does anybody want to go on comparable work?
What does that involve?
It meets every 3 years, so we just completed that, so the next time will be 3 years from now. It's usually 2 meetings. First meeting, you're looking at a job list of all of our employees, and then comparing that to a state list, assigning points. Then we put that out to the district staff. They have right to make appeals to that list. We hear any appeals and decide points to those job positions. Usually it's 2 meetings. Each meeting probably was about an hour and a half, 2 hours. So typically November, 1 meeting in November, 1 meeting in December, 3 years from now.
Okay.
Does anybody want to go on comparable work?
I can stay with that, but a few years from now, I should know what I'm doing.
Okay, so we'll put Janelle down for that. Thank you. What about MSBA? I don't know. Go ahead, Toby.
Are those meetings local or virtual or?
I honestly don't know. I don't know of any in my year and a half that have happened.
Okay. I'll take it.
Move that to Toby.
Teacher negotiations.
Angela's gonna take teacher negotiations. Did anybody else? Evaluation committee. Oh, I'm already on that.
I could do that one.
Sorry.
I'd be willing to do communication, retention, and climate. Unless someone else wants it.
Perfect.
Were we gonna just keep that at 2, or were we gonna have a third?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I was just saying if there wasn't somebody, there is already 2 on
Oh,
there.
okay.
But it's perfectly fine, Toby, if you wanna.
Otherwise, I could do it too, because I don't have that many responsibilities at the moment.
Janelle can have it.
Okay. So then
Okay.
Janelle on the
On
communication.
evaluation and communication retention, okay. We'll just finish updating my list.
Yep, not evaluation, that was on Heather.
And almost ready. Okay, I'm good.
All right, thank you, everybody. So now I need a motion to approve the updated school board committees.
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
One second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is attendance. Dave, do you have any question regarding attendance?
Nope.
All right, then we are moving on to the presentation of the audit.
Okay, we have, you can see virtually Erin Dahl from our financial institute. Joanne Bruns are online, and Erin's gonna kick off our audit. Erin, they can see you. I know you can't see me, but they can see you. Are you able to hear me?
Yep.
And we can hear you, so go ahead. I will open. You're presenting. Perfect.
Hopefully my PowerPoint comes up here.
Yep.
All right, thanks Brian, and thank you board for the opportunity to present tonight and be the district's auditors again this year. I'm Aaron Dahl, I'm audit manager with Bergen KDV. I'll walk through the audit results and then take a look at some of the trends and analysis of the district's financial statements. So starting with the independent auditor's report, we did issue an unmodified opinion on the district's financial statements, which is the best opinion we can give as auditors. By giving that opinion, we're stating that the district's basic financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position and changes in the financial position of the governmental activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining funds. We also issue a report in accordance with the government auditing standards. We did note one internal control finding again this year related to the lack of segregation of accounting duties. So this is a similar finding as in the past, and it's based primarily on the district size of the finance team. So there is some overlap in duties there, and it's something that we feel needs to be noted within the audit reports. There's nothing that came to light this year that caused any concern, but with that overlap of duties or the opportunity for employees to have their hand in more than one piece of the financial process, we do note that. We also issue a report on the compliance for each major federal program and on internal control over compliance required by uniform guidance. So this single audit is triggered when a district spends at least $750,000 in federal expenditures. This year we tested the Education Stabilization Fund. And happy to report no program findings when we did a single audit related to that program. And then the last report is related to the Minnesota legal compliance. That's where we test things like bids and contracts, conflicts of interest, collateral, things of those nature. We did have a couple notes there. We did note some improper quoting of restricted funding. So some of those funds that come from the state need to be tracked and recorded with their restricted fund codes. We noticed a little inconsistency there. And then also related to the report submission timing. So things are supposed to be submitted to MDE by November 30th. We were a little late on that, so we note that in that report as well. But again, nothing of concern on our end. Next, we'll jump into some of the communication letter items. So the first chart we have here relates to the general education aid formula allowance. So since the formula allowance and the general education aid is the main source of funding for the district, we do keep an eye on the percentage increases in the amounts each year. For fiscal year 23, there was a 2% increase. And for fiscal year 24, there actually is a jump up to 4%. So there should be another bit of an increase for the following fiscal year as well. A lot of those aids are based on the student counts or the pupil units and the resident average daily membership. So the first chart we have here shows the resident ADM for each of the past 5 years. There was a slight decrease in fiscal year 23 by about 0.5%. So it dropped from a little over 1,052 down to 1,048. Taking a look at the 5-year trend, that has increased by 2% compared to 2019. So overall, pretty stable resident numbers over the past 5 years. With that, ADM numbers do get converted into pupil units, which is the factor that is based for the state aids. As you can see, we have those presented there with the secondary grade getting a 1.2 factor compared to the 1 factor for the other age groups. Taking a look at the adjusted pupil unit number for each of the past 5 years here, we did note a slight decrease comparing 2022 to 2023, dropping from a little over 1,080 down to a 1,054. So again, that drop in resident ADM is that top number there. There was also an increase in the resident pupil unit loss, so that happens through open enrollment. So the increase in number of students going elsewhere went from about 310 to 323. And then there was a slight drop in the non-resident pupil units coming into the district. So those coming into the district from outside areas dropped from about 237 down to 232. With that, about 28.2% of the district's resident pupil units are leaving through open enrollment. And again, that's offset partially by the 232 non-resident pupil units coming into the district. This loss did increase in 2023. It's about 90 units compared to about 73 units in 2022. Overall, the units did decrease by about 26 for the 1 year, again related to that decrease in residents and loss from open enrollment. Here we just have the percentage changes for both the resident ADM and also the adjusted pupil unit number for each of the past 5 years. So some fluctuations throughout each of the 5 years. 3 of the 5 had increases across the board, and then 2021 and 2023 had slight decreases. But again, overall pretty stable comparing the 5-year trends. Next, we'll take a look at the general fund sources of revenue for each of the past 5 years. Taking a look at 2023, the revenues did increase by about 6%, or about $866,000, comparing 2022 to 2023. At the end of the fiscal year, state sources comprised about 72% of the total revenue. The taxpayer revenue contributed about 8%, and then the federal and other sources combined to make up the remaining 20%. Revenues from the state sources did increase by about 3.6% for the year, or $386,000. And a lot of that was with the increase in the amount of general education aid, with that formula allowance that we looked at earlier, along with an increase in special education aid as well. The other category, which again is composed of other local revenues, federal sources, and then any sales or other conversion of assets, that increased by about $548,000 during the year, and a lot of that was due to additional federal funding related to some of those COVID grants, specifically those education stabilization funds that came in through the general fund. Next, we have the general fund expenditures. It's probably kind of small to see, but the past 2 years are presented here with percentages by program. Overall expenditures did increase by about 1.6 million, or 11.8% for the year. The allocation remained pretty similar to the prior year. A few percentage changes here and there. I think sites and buildings increased from about 10% to 13%, and others followed suit related to that increase. Taking a look at the budget to actual results for the general fund, so it was projected with an original surplus of about $426,000. The budget was amended to project a final budgeted surplus of about $323,000, and the actual results at the end of fiscal year 23 saw a deficit of about $296,000. And a major chunk of that, as you can see, is with that other financing uses line. So that's where transfers were made, the food service fund and community service fund, to cover up some operating deficits of those funds. So overall, variance of about $618,000 compared to the final budget. Taking a look at the revenues, those were pretty much spot on. There was just a 0.1% variance over the final budgeted revenues there. Revenues from state sources were under budget by about $272,000, budgeting for higher anticipated state aids. And then revenues from the other sources were about $273,000 over budget, with investment earnings performing above anticipated, along with some student activity revenues not being completely budgeted there. On the expenditure side, actual expenditures were approximately 3% over the final budgeted expenditures. Taking a look at some variances by program, the regular instruction program was about $197,000 under budget due to amounts for salaries and benefits coming in under budget. The instructional support service expenditures were about $185,000 under budget, with some staff development expenditures being allocated here, but actually being spread across other programs. On the other side, the pupil support services was $231,000 over budget, with some increases in salaries, fuel costs, plus supply costs and capital expenditures. And then the main one was the sites and buildings program, which was over budget by about $487,000, related primarily to 2 new roof projects, one of which was not initially included with the budget. Next, we have a few metrics taking a look at revenues and expenditures per ADM served for the general fund. We have both the district's numbers here in blue, along with the state averages in green. The revenues per ADM have consistently remained below the state average. They actually did increase by about 8.4% from 2022 to 2023, with that increase in revenues as well as that decrease in ADM, so those both contributed to the increase there. The revenues per ADM served have increased by about $3,500 comparing 2019 to 2023. Similarly, the expenditures per ADM is presented for each of the past 5 years. There was an increase here as well by about 14.4%. Again, the expenditures increased with the decrease in ADM as well. Taking a look at the 5-year trend, it has increased by about $3,600 over the 5 years. Comparing the percentages, the expenditures per ADM served have increased by about 30% over the past 5 years, while revenues per ADM have increased by about 28% over that same time period. So pretty similar growth patterns when taking a look at the revenue and expenditures on a per ADM basis. Next, we have the general fund operations. So we have the revenues and expenditures along with the components of the fund balance. As I kind of previously mentioned, the revenue increased by 6%, while expenditures increased by 11.8% for the year. The result was expenditures exceeding revenues by about $113,000 for the fiscal year. And again, those other financing uses composed of that transfers did drop fund balance down from almost $4.8 million down to about $4.5 million. The unassigned portion of the general fund balance, which is the amount available for future spending, did increase by about $322,000 up to about $4.2 million at the end of the year. So the major drop in fund balance was kind of within that long-term facility maintenance restricted balance. The unassigned balance at the end of the year did represent more than 3 months, or 27.4% of 2023 expenditures. The district's fund balance policy does outline a goal of a minimum of 25%. So again, that 27.4% was above the 25% called in the fund balance policy. So a little bit of a wiggle room there, but pretty close to the minimum. Next, we'll take a look at the special revenue fund. So starting with the food service fund, expenditures here have exceeded revenues in 3 of the 5 years presented, including 2023. Revenues decreased by about 25%, while expenditures increased by about 6.7%. And the main factor relating to that was related to meals not being fully reimbursed by federal sources in 2023, whereas they were fully reimbursed in 2022. So as you can see, that $947,000 in 2022 kind of sticks out a little bit compared to the other 4 years. While expenditures did exceed revenues, the district did have a positive fund balance at the end of the year of about $16,900. Again, related to that transfer in from the general fund of about $169,000. And finally, we have the community service fund. Expenditures did exceed revenues here with an operational deficit of about $38,000 for the year. Again, 3 of the 5 years presented did kind of see that deficit spending on the community service side of things. Revenues did increase by about 5.7%, while expenditures increased by 13.9%. The revenues increased with some higher tuition and fees, along with some increases in gifts and other miscellaneous revenue as well, while expenditures did increase primarily as a result of higher salaries and benefits in 2023. So one thing to note, at kind of that bottom line, you can see is a positive of about 8,600, while it had been in a deficit for each of the previous 4 years. So good to see that kind of get back above the red. With that, I'll open it up to any questions or comments the board may have.
Does anybody have any questions for Aaron?
I don't think there's any questions, Aaron.
All right, well, thanks again.
So I would be recommending, I don't know, I want to make sure I say this right, so I'm going to pull up my email from Joanne so I say this right. That I recommend you approve the audit with also part of approving that audit of transferring from our fund balance to food service, which we talked about of that $169,104.63, and transferring to community ed from our fund balance $64,690.08. Which we had done when we built the budget, we just need to actually transfer the money.
Does anybody have any questions regarding what Brian just said? Then I'm looking for a motion to accept the audit.
I'll make that.
I'll move that.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Great, next up is open forum. Rules for open forum. There's 3 minutes per speaker. Open forum shall not take more than a total of 15 minutes. No complaints about individual staff members. All presenters will conduct their business in a manner that meets community standards for decorum. The board will not take action on items presented in an open forum. Did anybody sign up? Does anybody in the wish to speak, George?
I hate to be a pain all the time, but for transportation now, we're over budgeted. We have all these children that don't behave on the buses. Now we put them in one of the vans and take them home. That isn't really right, because that's coming out of our transportation. Really, their parents should come and get them kids. Some of the other bus drivers don't want to say stuff. Another thing is, we go down to Pine City with Vision and the other transitions. On Wednesdays, early release, Pine City will not release them kids, so then we have to take an extra vehicle down there to pick them up and then take them home. Right, Brian? I
The
believe.
Vision program changed its hours this year, if that's what you're talking about.
Well, on Wednesdays, when we have early release, they won't release them kids when we go to get some of them, so we have to go down there with an extra vehicle to pick them up.
I guess I don't know all those details.
That's the way I understand. You know, and then we have to take them kids home in the vans. So, I'm just looking at, there's maybe some money to be saved there, so. Nobody else wants to say anything about this, you know, so they're just, you know, I'm just looking at trying to save some money, a lot of gas, a lot of miles on vehicles. So, just like, I know, I hate this open enrollment, you know, I hate this homeless kid because we have to go to Timbuktu hauling kids, which isn't right either. It burns up a lot of our resources, you know, but some of that's state mandated, I know, so.
Thank you, George. Next up is the consent agenda. Does anyone need anything pulled from the consent agenda and placed later?
Just remember we approved it in the budget, but I had 2 ads under resignation as well.
All right, I am looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. I'll make the motion. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is board bills. If you have a question on the bill, please state the page number and the bill number. Does anybody have any questions on the bills? The only question I had was for American Red Cross. Why do we pay American Red Cross? Of course, I didn't write it down.
What's up, more Jody, you just passed it.
I did follow my own,
Stop,
right
right
there,
underneath your cursor.
93601 for $300.
I wonder if that's what it costs to do the blood drive. I can look into that.
Will we pay them?
I don't know.
Can I chime in?
Yeah.
It's in order for us to have Red Cross swimming lessons and be a Red Cross location,
Oh.
we have to pay a fee.
Oh, because we
To
use
be-
Memorial for the blood drive, never
Yes,
mind.
no, it's for
Okay.
swimming lessons.
Okay, that makes
Is,
sense.
Thank you.
is what I mean, I know what was done about that thing, and that's the
Okay.
amount, so I would guess that's what it's for.
Thank you, Angela. Does anybody have any other questions regarding bills? If not, I'm looking for a motion to pay the bills.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is the superintendent's report. Brian?
Just not a lot of board committee meetings currently scheduled for this month. MSBA conference for some of us this week. And then PD committee is coming up later in the month, or also this week, sorry. If you're interested in getting more information from MSBA, if you don't have access to that, Greg Abbott, if there's his email address, and you can get daily clippings and information from them. So just wanted to make sure that information was passed on. And then we just did board oaths of office and committees and things like that. Hinckley-Finlayson has not followed MSBA's full recommendation for January. A lot of school districts do in January what we typically do in July. MSBA recommends in January that we elect officers, appoint committees, set meeting times and dates, newspaper, depository, legal counsel. You can see all the things MSBA recommends. We do most of those in July. Our school district has had a long stance of following the fiscal year for doing that. What we do in January, which we're going through now, is we do the officers and committees and new board reps and bring on new board members. You'll talk about a reduction resolution, but we do most of that business stuff in July. Just historically, our district has chosen to follow the fiscal year. And I just wondered, and I think I asked last year, but wanted to check again, does the school board want to look at changing anything? Are we happy with our practice would we rather do it all in January going forward? Are we okay with what we do in January and then do the rest in July? Just wondered if any discussion on that needed to happen. Of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any preferences, Brian, or how do you see it?
I think it's worked. I have not seen any issue, I guess, in my 2 years of doing what we do in July. We set all the fees and things like that before the school year, so I think it goes fine as long as it's working for the 7 of you. It's working for the school district. I don't know any different otherwise, so. I think it would be hard to switch some of those things up mid-year possibly, but. Otherwise, that's all I had for my report this month.
All right, thank you, Brian. Next up is high school principal, Kim.
Good evening. The first item on my board report is just looking at some behavior comparisons over the last few years. So I just kind of broke some of the bigger things down for you. One of the areas to kind of note is that we did see quite a big increase in bullying and harassment this school year. A lot of these referrals are students who are saying something to another student, thinking that they're joking around. The other student doesn't think it's a joke. And so really working with students on appropriate, that can't just say whatever you want without thinking that and if somebody asks you to stop, you need to stop. So Caitlin Anderson, our junior high counselor, spends the majority of her time meeting with students for this type of incident and making sure that students understand that they can't just say things, even if they think it's joking, that if students ask you to stop, you need to stop. So we're continuing to work on that. But otherwise, comparison to numbers, very similar. As you look to 80% of our students have 0 or 1 referrals, which is great, 362 students. 64 students or 15% have that 2 to 5, and then there are 25 students or only 5% of our population has that 6 or more referrals. So it is kind of a small population that's that has the majority of those referrals. Some other things that we're really doing this year to address some of these things, we have grade level team meetings twice a month where grade levels meet, talk about students that may be struggling, looking at different interventions, different things we can do to help support them in the classroom. Also during PLCs, we have positive behavior strategies workshop with Nick Van Oss from SCRED. So we look at different strategies, how we can do different things in the classroom to engage our students to help them be on track and focused. We have our access behavior, creating interventions for students who have those 10 plus behavior referrals and trying something different. Jason, our behavior interventionist, works a lot with these students, pulls them out, processes with students, provides that extra support, can go in the classroom and do different things with students. So again, it's kind of just a trial and error to see what works for each student, but he works really hard and has done a really great job this year. Jason also does hallway sweeps, so he's constantly walking the hallways, checking bathrooms, and that's really been a great thing this year, that there's always somebody checking things, making sure students have passes where there need to be, things like that. We have the Focus 5 commitments where teachers are really focusing on no cell phones in class. We don't allow students to have passes that first 10 minutes of class, so that students are really making sure that they're for that instruction before they're asking to go to the bathroom or the nurse or things like that. Making sure that teachers are using that e-hall pass system so that we can track who's in our hallways, what things are in, so that we know if something happens, was in the hallways and help track things down easier. And then just taking time to review those classroom expectations, making sure we're posting our expectations. Teachers are reviewing those things every day. Also looking at redesigning our lunch detention to make it more of a consequence, so it's not just students hanging out with their friends in a different room, that it's actually a consequence to kind of help deter some of those behaviors. And then doing those incentives for our students, doing our drawings again on Friday for students that have no referrals, no unexcused, no tardies, things like that, really celebrating the positive things that we're doing in classroom. Another thing as part of our MTSS grant, the second year of the grant is kind of more focusing. Last year we started with the district level and now we're moving to the school level. So we really are focusing on the junior high this year. And so once a month for half a day, 5 of our junior high teachers meet and are really looking at a redesign or what can we do differently with our junior high, because we've noticed, I've shared with you the data that our junior high students are really struggling more than the high school, and so what can we do differently? So they're meeting again this Thursday, and then we're hoping to bring some of their ideas to our ILT instructional leadership team next week, and then hopefully to the board within the next few months of some different ideas or things we're planning to do next year to really help support our junior high students and make things more successful for them in a big high school type of setting like this. So some things they're talking about is making a separate junior high handbook, so different expectations or rules or things for junior high versus high school. They're looking at a redesign, maybe moving classrooms around. So we have junior high maybe contained to a smaller area for passing times and things like that. Just looking at the different privileges and things that are at the high school and how we can better support our students. So those are just some of the things we're working on to address behaviors. The next thing is the subject matter change. We changed, Mr. Kraft changed the requirements from grades to he's stating due to the nature of the class, students with chronic or major behavior or attendance issues will not be able to participate in the class. The instructor and the principal will jointly decide if the students are eligible to enroll. So that is the change based on the feedback from last month. So looking for approval to change that in the subject matters tonight. Any questions for me on that?
I did have a question.
Yeah.
So with the courses, is there an application process with the Angling class for students?
So what they do is Ms. Hartle, our counselor, goes around and registers kids, so kids will pick their classes, and then from there, Dan will take the class list and him and I will meet and look through the students, and if we have any concerns, then we'll pull the student, talk to the student, contact the parent, and then go from there. So there's no like official application process. Kids just pick the classes they want, and then then Dan and I would review the list, and if we have concerns, go from there.
Is there a surplus of students that are wanting to get into those courses, the English class in particular?
This year we did not have a surplus, no.
Okay.
The first year we had a lot of interest, but then this year it's not full at all.
just a thought process that I had. I agree 100% with behaviors and with some of the, knives and stuff that are used during the class. To combine it, if there's a class that is really, a lot of students want to do, going through an application process like they essentially would have to do with a job, applying for college, that may be something to tie in.
I like that.
Does anybody have any other questions regarding the change in English classes? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the changes to the handbook subject matter.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up.
All right, the next topic, science fair has two parts, so I'll first just talk about the first part. The science teachers would like to remove the science fair elective from the subject matters for next school year due to lack of student interest. We only had 5 students participate this year. Only 1 actually wanted to take the class, the other ones took it because it fit in their schedules, they needed an elective, not necessarily they were passionate about it. So due to just the lack of interest, we would like to remove the elective from the subject matter next school year. Any questions for me on that?
If there are no questions, I'm looking for a motion to approve removing the science fair elective class from subject matter for next year.
I'll second it.
There's a motion then. Excuse me, there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
The next part is something I just kind of wanted to bring to the board just to kind of start the conversation. I know we talked a lot about the science fair last year and there's a lot of different pieces and components. And before I bring it to you for a vote or to even a bigger discussion, I kind of tonight wanted to know if there's any concerns the board has, anything you want me to look into, research, any more information you need before I would bring it to the board for a vote. The science and English department would like the board to consider eliminating the traditional science fair from the 9th grade curriculum next year. Some of the reasons they wanted me to just share with you tonight before I get some input on things you'd like me to look into or consider in the future. This year we had about 60% participation, so 40% of our students didn't even turn in anything, which means they fail the class, which is a huge number. Also, of the kids that turned in, another 20% just turned something in just to get credit. It wasn't something that they were put a lot of work in or super excited about. So that just puts a lot of stress on teachers. We did really try this year. We had parent meetings, I made phone calls to families, I met with students. We really tried to increase that participation. We eliminated barriers, like as far as if students need supplies, materials, we paid for everything. We covered it to make sure that wasn't a barrier. So again, we talked about some of the things that were struggles last year and did the best we could to try and increase that participation this year, and just really struggled again. Also too, next year, we're gonna start that change. Next year, both 8th and 9th grade are gonna do physical science, and then they flip the following year. So this year, the science department is really gonna need to spend some time looking at curriculum maps and redesigning things. So it's a really good time to make this transition, because they're gonna be doing a lot of work redesigning and doing things. Both the science and English departments still wanna do a lot of the components of the science fair. There's still a lot of value in research, there's still a lot of value in experiments and all those different pieces that are valuable. They just wanna do it in a different way, and having the traditional science fair where it takes almost half the school year to really do and complete in order to meet the standards for competition. It's just been really hard on our students and our teachers. And so all of my staff are really, would like the board to consider this. Also too, last year at the competition, there were only 5 schools that competed competed regionally, so we don't even know if it'll continue after this year either. Regionally, we just don't know what's gonna happen this year because we haven't gotten that far yet. And so those are just kind of some reasons. And again, I just would like to know if you have any questions or things you want me to look into, any research you'd like me to do, anything that you need in order to move forward with this discussion or even a vote at some time. I know it's a really big deal and it's a big change. And they're definitely gonna consider doing, like I said, the components, like Jeff, who teaches 7th grade, is looking at doing mini. He has a bunch of little mini experiments, so starting in 2nd grade and kind of building, but just not, so it's still doing a lot of the things, just not doing it in the traditional way we've done it. Does that make sense? So again, I'm not looking for a vote tonight. I just wanted to know what more information you'd like me to bring forward in the future to maybe consider this.
Do you know how many that are, I'm looking at the local science fair winners, how many of those actually go and participate in the regional?
Only half chose to participate. So I think
This year or last year?
this year,
This year?
I believe 12 students are actually going to compete.
So if you get rid of the traditional science fair, then there's no opportunity for regional, state, or international science fair.
Correct.
I think that's lowering the bar. I don't like that idea at all.
Okay.
We're shortchanging kids the opportunity who really want to participate in science and push themselves. Now we're lowering the bar for those students. And yeah, true, there may be 40% of the kids who maybe don't turn in anything or don't try, but we're shortchanging the 60% that do. And I think we need to be challenging those 60% and then doing what we can to lift those 40%, encourage, but not look for excuses to gut our program even further. And I think even if there's only five schools participating at the regional science fair, if we get rid of the traditional science fair, then we become part of the problem. Now maybe there's only 4 schools participating. I don't think we should become part of the problem. I think we should stay the course. Maybe encourage other school districts to have a traditional science fair. I went to internationals and I thought it was a great experience. I put it on my job resume. The one thing from high school that I put on my job resume, alternate for International Science Fair in 1987. I never dreamed I would have made it, but I did. Maybe there's some kids who will they will exceed their own expectations and they'll have something to put on their job resume. Or even kids that don't go to international, maybe they'll learn about the scientific method in a way that they never would have otherwise. You know, if we got rid of that traditional science fair and doing a traditional science project. So I hope we don't go that direction.
Thank you.
A couple questions I have is what our science test scores were from last year. How that correlates to comprehension of producing a science fair project. And spending so much in the English class, do we have kids failing English because of the paper that is assigned with the okay.
Because it's such a big thing for both science and English, it takes up the majority of time, it's the majority of their grade. So if they don't turn something in, that 0 doesn't allow them to pass.
Can we still offer a science fair project type for those that would want to do it, that have the mindset to do it, and give them something, I don't know, extra credit or something that would go towards, I don't know how that would
Or
work.
you think like after school, Jody,
Yeah.
in a class or something,
Yeah,
or elective or something?
for 9th grade though, if it is not offered.
you know, we've really been racking our brain on a solution, and we just haven't come up with anything that, you know, meets the needs of all kids, and I completely agree. It's really hard, and we've really tried, and if we're open to suggestions, we're open to ideas. So we'll continue to look at some things.
I thought when we looked at it last year, it was under 20% of comprehension of the science test.
Yeah.
So is it a stupid question by saying that of that 20% can only do the science fair project?
Say that again.
So if our science testing scores are under 20% for the high school level, is that saying 20% of the high schoolers know how to do a science project?
No.
Okay.
No. I don't have the exact information in front of me, but no, a lot of it's more content-based, not necessarily the stuff that's involved with the science fair.
Okay, on the test.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I can get that more information for you next time, or have Brian send it, share it with you in his update.
So you said there might not be a science fair next year, just even regionally?
That was the discussion when they went last year. Again, we'll find out this year how many schools, but that was just a discussion they had last year.
Do you have an idea of when they might make that decision?
I don't. I can see if when they go, if they can ask, if they hear anything more.
I have been told the regional coordinator was retiring last year, but
How many schools used to compete?
I don't know that. Brian, do you know?
I don't know, but I know just from going there, it used to be packed. Now I haven't been there since my own kids were in 9th and 10th grade, and what I'm hearing is that going up to UMD is not nearly as many families or kids up there as it used to be. I don't know numbers, but I know the year I was there with my own child, it was packed. And I've heard that from the teachers lately, it's not that way anymore. I don't have hard numbers.
I think they reported on it last year when they came back.
Yeah.
Any more questions for Kim to bring back to us?
And if you think of anything, you can email me ideas, thoughts, questions, and then we'll go from there.
I think I would just, if they could, you know, give us their best ideas on what they want it to look like next year, so we know, okay, if we're giving up the science fair, what their vision is to replace it, just so we know what that curriculum would potentially look like, the best that they can.
One other point that I got when I asked for feedback from our two pillars of science fair history in our school, Mr. Grice and Mr. Jensen, I got some feedback from Mr. Jensen regarding, okay, if you're gonna get rid of one of the 2 years, not have 9th and 10th do it, just choose one of the years. Mr. Jensen said he would recommend going with 10th graders doing it instead of 9th graders because they're more mature, they have another year of learning about the scientific method, and they have a higher probability of being more successful with their science projects. To have, if you're only going to have one grade do it, make it the 10th graders. But Mr. Jensen and both Mr. Him and Mr. Grice were supportive of having both 9th and 10th graders do it. But I think Mr. Jensen is right on the money. It should be, if 9th grade is struggling, look at 10th graders to do it.
And I agree with that. The reason we chose 9th grade is because 9th grade, they don't test in 9th grade for MCAs, they test in 8th and 10th. And so that's why we put it in 9th, because so much of the year is not spent on content, that's the reason we chose to keep it in 9th grade. But that is a really valid point, that when they're a little older, they have some more skills and things, so.
And my other question is too, how much time are we spending on just science projects? I mean, in comparison to when Mr. Jensen and Mr. Grice were running the program, are we spending too much time in the classroom? Is that something that should be more done outside of the classroom?
I think it's, sorry, Ms. Hinckley, sorry if I interrupt. It's had to change because kids are not doing it as much at home as they
Okay.
used to. So I would agree with you, and I would bet the teachers would too. We are giving a lot of classroom time for it, but that's because they're not doing it at home. So to get the project done, they have to give up that class time to get the project done.
And kind of how they structure it is they'll spend like a week working on one component. They'll do the instruction, they'll go over what the expectations are, and then students are expected to work on it. Then they'll go back to content, teach for a week or two some content, then they go back to science fair, and so it makes that instructional piece a little more choppy too. So then when they go back to the content, the kids forgot what they did a couple weeks ago. So just wanting to streamline that, what's happening with instruction. Right. And so last is Hannah and Brecken, our school board members, high school board members.
The honor band played on Saturday and I heard that it went very well. And then girls basketball were 6-6. This season we have a game tomorrow in Aiken that we're hoping to win. Boys hockey is 4-8 and then girls hockey is 9-7.
Yeah. And then the boys basketball games, I haven't been to as many as I'd like to because they all overlap with girls, but they're 4-6 on their season. And now, today we had a student council meeting on planning Snow Week, which is right around the corner at the end of the month. I believe the dates are the 23rd through the 26th, so just the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And we have some fun activities like a dodgeball tournament and then a talent show. And we just picked out the days for the dress-up days, so that's always fun. And then the end of the quarter is coming soon, which is exciting and also kind of sad, but you know. Halfway through. So yeah, that's all we got for you guys today.
Does anybody have any questions for Hannah or Brecken? Thank you, girls. Thank you, Pam. Next up is elementary principal.
Something I said? First I want to start off by School Board Appreciation Month. Thank you for what you do for our community, for our schools each and every day. So your continued support and commitment to our schools doesn't go unnoticed, so thank you. We have Epic Day coming up on Monday. Unfortunately, this year about 80% of the elementary staff will be missing Epic Day due to our letters. We are going to spend a majority of our time doing the letters training, and we will need it. It's a lot. So a lot of our staff will be staying back. The rest that are not doing letters will be attending Epic. I know the Epic committee is a little bit behind on getting their stuff out as to what they're going to pick up on for continuing ed credits and whatnot, but that is a great day for them to absorb and do some collaboration with area schools. So couple of the programs that we have going on at the elementary, our elementary teamed up with the Minnesota Honor Society students this year to do the food drive. Pretty proud of our staff and our families who donated over 1,000 items to the food shelf. So it was the majority of that food drive that went really, really well. We have 100 families who currently benefit from the backpack program in Hinckley, and 9 families up in Finlayson who take a bag of food home every week. While our families are very, very appreciative of this food, sometimes it doesn't always make it home, so we continue to work with the transition program who packs the bags on the best way to get that home. Some of our kids are on the bus for over an hour. And if George is still here, he can attest to some of that food being dabbled through. They take out kind of what they want and get rid of what they don't want. So just trying to really find a way to get that food into the families' homes. You know, we can have them come pick it up here, but a lot of those families are the ones without transportation too. So it's a struggle. We've dabbled in different ideas and different concepts to help with that, but the food is still going out. We had 83 students or 43 families who received gifts through the Giving Tree work that they do. It was just amazing to see. Minnesota Honor Society students also came over to help wrap gifts. Just the kind, loving-hearted people that we have working for us and in our community. These children benefited from that, so that was very good to see. We have book bingo coming up, with February being I Love to Read month. We will have a month full of activities, but we will do book bingo at Hinckley Elementary again. All are invited. We'll be doing that February 1st with a huge donation from the Hinckley Lions again, and Jill Hopkins coordinating all of that. Good news after last month's board meeting, I think Shelley Scaff said, why not Finlayson? I reached back out to Minnesota Extension, and Finlayson will be getting Go Wild this year. So she re-looked at some things and they do qualify. So they'll be getting the Go Wild program up there as well. And the last thing is we have Amplify coaching that came in. We adjusted some things so everybody either got to observe or be observed by Amplify coaching. We had mixed feedback on that as well. The feedback was quite short this time due to trying to get everybody feedback. So we do know that continued PD is important when we have new curriculums, but just kind of figuring out what the balance is on that. Everybody's in different places with the implementation of that new curriculum, so we'll just keep, throwing ideas around and see how we can best support our teachers with new curriculum. We have junior high, so 6, 7, and 8 Amplify coming out, I believe, January 19th. So they'll get some coaching as well. And like the seniors had stated, Q3 is right around the corner, and it's hard to believe. Questions?
Does anybody have any questions for Bonnie? Thank you, Bonnie. Next up is athletics.
That's me.
Mandy.
I don't have a lot to report since the girls did half my report for me, so that's nice. AAA applications were received and sent on to our subsection, and Matt Masterson and Anna Dagerstrom are our 23-24 nominees. That banquet will be held on Wednesday in Mora at the Grand Event Center, and then that is when they will pick winners to represent our subsection at the section 5A section banquet, which I don't have information on that yet. Junior high girls basketball finished their season. There were 9 7th graders and 2 8th graders that participated. They ended their regular season on December 12th, and 7 of the 11 7th and 8th graders continued on to C team. It was optional to participate, and those students they want to play basketball a little bit longer, so they're going to be playing on C team, which helps our C team out a little bit because for a while we didn't have one because grade eligibility was not good. But now everybody's where they need to be, and it's unfortunate that we just don't have as many games either, but there's a lot of C teams, like especially for girls basketball, that it just really doesn't exist anymore. It's more varsity JV. So just trying to get them an opportunity to practice, and I've also looked at maybe adding a few more games. So that might come down the pipeline as well, where we can play if we have a gym open or something. Junior high boys basketball just started their season on January 3rd. There's 10 7th graders, and I think that list actually grew since I did my board report. I think we added like 2 more, and we had a new student come in starting last Wednesday, and I think he was thinking about possibly playing as well. And then we do have 7 8th graders that are participating, and those 8th graders are also playing on C team. So they're going to play 8th grade games when possible, and we do have enough to play 2 games if needed. So we'll kind of look at that and see how that goes. We already kind of talked about varsity, JV, and C team boys basketball, but there's 17 players on varsity and JV and 10 on C team. And for girls basketball, there are 15 players on varsity and JV and 11 on C team. Right now I have 8 winter cheerleaders, and they seem to be doing very well. They attend home events only, pretty similar to what our conference schools do, although Moose Lake Little River isn't in our conference, but they did bring cheerleaders on Friday night when they came. So we had like dueling cheerleaders, I don't know. I am also currently looking at rearranging some practice schedules for winter sports to see if we can have some games moved out of the small gym. I know it's not ideal, but that gym floor is in way better shape than gym 3. And I did go in the gym and I did look, and there is a lot of room down the one sideline. So what I'm thinking is maybe we will put chairs out for players over there. They'll have to check in across the gym, of course, because you can't have the scoreboard worker sitting in between where the teams are because they won't be able to see the scoreboard. So that is definitely not ideal. But might actually make a little more room so people aren't walking in front of each other and that kind of stuff. I did look at the elementary gym, but we also have a lot of youth sports that are scheduled in there during the times that I would need it for games. So then you're also kind of taking that away from other people, just trying to get it moved around. But we do have everything in there that we would need, and it's not real ideal for supervision with the behaviors that have been going on, especially at junior high. I would much rather have them here in this building because this is where I'm gonna be, and a lot of the games happen on the same nights as the other games. So, and I don't wanna do that to Mrs. Scullard either. I don't want people like wandering the elementary school and you're not catching that. It's just gonna be hard to get people kind of all over the place, but it can be done if we can move some stuff around. But I think I got it down to only 2 games being played in this small gym because I can rearrange some practice things, put some people that we can hold some practices in there and then move them around. So any feedback on that would be great. We are pretty fortunate to have that space because if you go to other GRC gyms, they don't have the seating that we do. Actually, that compared to like you go to East Central's gym, you're lucky to even find a seat in there if you're going to a junior high game. Same with Ogilvy. Bram is a little bit bigger, but their gym is kind of set up like ours is. So Science Fair took place on December 11th. We had our winter band and choir concert on December 18th. We have 1 act play, knowledgeable, junior high speech, and robotics currently underway, and 1 act play will perform on Saturday, January 27th. And then last thing to report is we did receive the Grant B Foundation grant through the Minnesota State High School League, but due to the number of people that put in their applications this year, we were only granted so much. So that will cover 1 AED, but now we'll have an extra one for traveling for sports. We'll actually have 2 that we can send to do 2 different places, which is nice if Timber isn't around. So you can have 1 at the track, 1 at the baseball field, 1 at the softball field, really, because Timber will be in one of those 3 places. So then we're covered there. And then we also received the Grant A Foundation grant earlier in December. So as soon as that money comes from the Grant B Foundation, I'll be ordering the other AED. So, and then I also should mention that as far as I know, the Lions they're planning on holding their annual pancake supper on January 26th, which is that Friday of Snow Week. But I have not heard anything as of late of if they're doing it or not, so that is a tentative date that they did set with me, and I thought we had nailed that down, but I'm just double checking to make sure that it's happening. We play East Central that night, so it'd be very well attended, so.
Can you let Brian know so he can put it in our Friday update, please?
Yep.
Does anybody have any questions for Mandy?
I do, Mandy. Can we check out possibly hosting a Christmas tournament?
We are looking into that as well.
Okay.
It's just, I'm not gonna mention anything until we know for sure. There is a few area schools especially for girls basketball that would like to do that, because right now we're currently going to Chisholm, possibly to ESCO, but we feel like we might be able to get some other teams that we're maybe a little more competitive with by having something here. And it'd be nice because we wouldn't have to travel.
And I think ESCO kind of gouges the fans for what they charge.
They probably do. We're not as nice. We're a lot nicer. They're not as nice as us.
Yes. Okay, good. Thank you.
We have a lot of seniors actually that come here and go, oh, you guys are so nice.
Is there any sense to looking at Finlayson's gym again to use that?
I mean, we could, but then we'd have to ship people
I know.
up that way. That'd be the only downside, but I mean, we did it when we were in high school. We actually played it in Finlayson High School. Yeah, like in that dungeon.
Okay.
So I mean, it happened, we did it.
Nice.
Well, okay, Bonnie played there before I did. A little bit, just a couple years. It's fine. But I mean, that is an option that we could look at too.
There's just a lot of seating there.
And the gym floor is actually probably really decent compared to the other 2 that we got going on too. But then that would be another issue of shipping kids up there. Well, we shouldn't really call it shipping, but that's what we call it. You know, having them go up there. especially with the buses being full, like you would have to probably run a bus specifically for Finlayson. I'm thinking just because those routes are so full. And then also the supervision aspect too. And I don't think my workers would have a problem getting there at all, but
We need to find somebody to drive it.
check, yep.
Any other questions for Mandy? Thank you, Mandy.
You're welcome.
Next up, head of maintenance, Keith.
We've had a lot of changes to our custodial staff this year. At Hinckley Elementary, we filled both positions, the daytime lead custodian, Melvin Patton, and the evening custodian, Ryan Reeder. At Finlayson Elementary, Warren Zaduki took over the lead custodian position. Also, we've been using subs over at the high school because of the absence of John Seagrath. Moving forward into next year with all these new positions, filled, we will work to get all the new employees properly trained in and learn their building. I will be getting bids for the 24-25 budget this year. This year we'll be resealing the 2 gyms, one at HES and the small gym at the high school. Also, I believe that the leasing of the lawnmower for Hinckley Elementary High School worked very well, and I'm looking to do that again. Also, I will be looking into getting a bid on upgrading Johnson controls for the district. I believe that's the high school, 2 at the high school, 1 at Powered and 1 at FES. There are a few other things in the works. Gym 3 floor at the Hinckley-Finlayson High School, football field, football practice field, a battery-operated carpet sweeper, and a new paint sprayer for the baseball, softball field, track, and also football fields. Also purchasing LED bulbs to retrofit most of the 4-foot fluorescent fixtures in the building. And in a few years, getting rid of the fluorescent bulbs completely. The place we would like to start would be the high school. In 2024, we will be having a fire inspection at all 3 schools and all buildings. Not sure on the dates yet, when it will be happening, during the school year or during summer break. There will have to be some pre-inspections of the classrooms and make sure that we are in fire code with all the furniture and rugs. I will also be looking for a new vendor for our fire extinguisher checks. Things that still need to be completed: install 2 new ovens at the high school kitchen, reordering filters and reorganizing how we order the filters for all the buildings in the district, and hanging the screen back on the fence at Brennan Field.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Keith?
Did we ever get equipment in the kitchen in Finlayson up and running? The last 2 years at senior banquet, they haven't been able to use some equipment. You aware of that or not?
No.
Okay, I believe the steamer's one thing.
Oh, the steamer, yes, yeah.
I don't think it ever worked since they put it in.
You know, we plugged it in and it worked for me, and then after that,
Okay.
because I was purchased before my time and there was no warranty on it. We did repair the one here, but that one's been a little trickier.
Okay.
Because I think the actuator that was like $460 just to.
And then are we putting up at Brennan Field, the top banner again, which caused the fence to go over or not, do you know?
I know.
This windscreen, I guess I would call it.
Windscreen, yes.
The tower part.
No, I was gonna talk to Tim Tom, he was gonna help me put up the screen, but the other part, that's totally up to somebody else if they want it up there, if it looks good, but that's the reason why it fell. But,
Yes.
But they did reinforce it with.
That's much better reinforced now than it was.
Yeah, it has more poles, it's actually thicker gauge, and they put more quantity of poles.
So it might hold up way better.
Yeah.
We've had one problem since they've done it, but.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Keith? Thank you, Keith. Next up is committee reports. Does anybody wish to present from their committees? Okay, moving on. Budget calendar.
Start with our enrollment. If you remember back to December, our enrollment had dipped under 953. I think it was 947 if I remember correctly. So as of January 1st, we were up a little bit. Still something we're very much watching. I know Empower is working on their enrollment. I believe that's going to be up in the 20s soon, but still under what we predicted. We had predicted our budget to be at 980 students, so that is something we're going to have to watch. And one of the reasons in February, I plan to bring you an updated budget for this school year. Hopefully, the HFPA contract will be approved tonight, and then we can get all the budget things in there so we can run a new budget for this school year. So I want to do that so we can see where we are, not only for this school year, but also so we can kickstart ourselves into budget season for next school year. So really what's going to start happening as far as budget for next year, teachers soon will receive their budget memos for classroom material requests. Both principals are working on their staffing and their registration for next year, so we can begin to look at staffing. And then, like I said, teachers will begin to putting their budgets together for what they need in their classroom. All COVID, ESSER, and those kind of funds will be expired, so we will not have those going into the next school year. Like I said, school board will approve a new budget in February, which will kickstart us into the budget for the 24-25 school year. One thing that I would like the school board to approve is we do this annually. It's mostly a procedural move. It's a resolution that would allow administration to look at all of our programming, all of our staffing, and maybe because of budget constraints, or our biggest thing that we're looking at is our lower enrollment. If we see areas that we could reduce or make changes or cuts, the board would be giving administration authority to do that, looking at all our programming and making any cuts where we may need. So I'd be looking for approval on that budget reduction resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve that budget reduction resolution.
There's a motion, is there a second?
A second.
There's a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Next up are the 3 policies.
We read these last month, just bringing them up for approval now. The one in the middle, the literacy and read act, is brand new to all schools. And that is part of what we are using when you hear letters. That's how we're meeting that law, or a good portion of that law is getting our staff trained up on letters. But otherwise, looking for approval on all 3 of these policies.
Does anybody have any question regarding the policies? If not, we're going to approve all 3 policies, if that's fine. So I'm looking for a motion to approve policy 620, credit for learning, policy 621, literacy and the read act, and policy 624, online instruction.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is open enrollment. Or does anybody have anything to add to J Pride? AAA. Are they not in there?
No. Brian, if you check your email, I sent it to you and Jill so she can add it to the next thing too. For her next Jaguar track.
We had in there too, our school board members who came to feed back to school for holiday breakfast. I think our staff really appreciates seeing board members there, and we appreciate the help, so thank you very much.
Okay.
Holiday staff breakfast. Alright, now we're gonna talk about open enrollment report.
And our auditors talked a little bit about this. The tops, so this is a comparison of kids who are opening enrolling outside of our district, who may be resident members of our district, but open enrolling somewhere else. You can see on the top half of this where our students, or at least where the majority of those students are going, and kind of the aid that's lost. So like the auditor said, our elementary students bring roughly a revenue of a little over 7,000, 7,100. High school students get 1.2 of that, which I think is off the top of my head about 8,500. So the aid lost is calculating how many of these are elementary and high school, and that's how I came up with the aid lost to each of those places. So you can see for open enrollment, kind of the aid that we're losing for those students. In the bottom half is kind of comparison of what's coming into Hinckley-Finlayson schools versus what's going out. So we are taking in this school year about 212 students from outside of our district. Last year we were at about 232 at this time. And those who are leaving Hinckley-Finlayson schools this school year, we're at 318, and last year we were at 353. So that number has gone down, which is good, but this bottom part, we still are at a net loss of about 106 students versus who we take in for open enrollment versus what we lose in open enrollment. So that also has an impact on our revenue as we are still responsible for paying the tuition for those students who leave, and we're not taking as much tuition in for the kids who are coming into our district. I don't know if there were any questions on that. Our auditors kind of talked a little bit about that as well as how that impacts our budget, but that was kind of a breakdown of what our numbers look like for this school year.
Does anybody have any questions regarding the open enrollment report? All right, then we are going to go on to board education, inventions and special supports.
Just put some common terms that you may hear either myself or the principals use, things that we either have to do because of different situations in families and students' lives, and kind of how that fits under all these areas. So I believe we had talked about it a few months ago, but I wanted to put this back up as these terminologies come up quite a bit. And wanted to see if there's any questions about some of the interventions or programming we have for students and how we support them.
Are there any questions regarding interventions or special supports verbiage? All right, then we will move on to the expenditures report.
You can see where our budget is or was. As far as 50% of the school year, we've spent about 37.67% of our budget. The reason it's so much lower is the contract with the teachers union has not yet been approved. Once that's approved, that will come closer together. But just wanted to report where our expenditures were as of the end of December.
Does anybody have any questions regarding the expenditure report? We will move on to our work session.
Like to set a work session if the date works for everyone of January 22nd, and the purpose that I'd like to have the work session for is to hopefully get the school board some more answers on the daycare. Have Anna Reiser here to meet with the school board. I've put out a survey as of this morning. I think we've had 77 responses. So I'd like to be able to share those with the board and have Anna Reiser here to answer or help facilitate any questions the board would have. So I'm hoping January 22nd would work for a work session here in Hinckley at 6:30 p.m.
Does anybody have any questions? Will that work for everybody to have a January 22nd work session? If you pull out your calendars.
It might work for me.
Okay. if you couldn't be in person, would you want to call in? Would you want to Zoom in as a work session?
That could be a possibility.
Okay, we could probably work around that since it's just a work session. But we just have to post it.
We just have to publicize it, yep.
All right, let's keep that in mind, Toby, if you can't make it.
Sure.
Then, go ahead.
I'll just say thank you.
Okay. Next, I'm looking for a motion to approve the work session for January 22nd, and it's here in Hinckley at 6:30.
I'll move that.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up, our discussion, or the next three policies.
Just a first read of the first policies. Are there any questions board members had on these that I can make sure we bring back to our transportation department and admin team?
No questions? We'll be moving on to the school calendar.
Recommend approval of this calendar, our 24-25 school year calendar. Some of the highlights in the calendar, there's a full spring break planned for next year, and I'll put it up on the screen after I make sure I read all my bullet points. We would still have Deer Day. One of the new changes is there would not be school for students the day after Halloween. Which was a request from especially our elementary teachers. Workshop week, when I put that up there, you'll see will be about 1.5 days longer. One full day on Thursday, and then a half day on the Friday before the traditional workshop week. Hopefully to give more time for PD technology, would kind of help partly replace the tech check day we've had. We built 2 snow days into the calendar, but if we needed to use more, we built 2 at the end of the calendar, where we would extend the school year, and teachers would have to come back the Monday after the first week of June. Thanksgiving still would have a 3-day break, as we've had the last 3 or 4 years. And we tried to build a PD day in right around the end of the quarter, roughly. One of the biggest things we'll still be working on is letters, but also if those aren't full day trainings, there could then be some time for grading and things like that for the teachers to help get their grading done at the end of the quarter. But I have the calendar up. You can see that workshop week, that's the change. Typically workshop week is just this last week of August. I'd have that 23rd Friday just be a half day in case people wanted to get out of town one last weekend. Thursday 22nd being a full day. Any questions on that?
The early release Wednesdays, that 1 hour early release is for, is it professional development for our teachers?
Correct.
Okay, I talked to the school board chair at Pine City via email, and they said that they have full days Monday through Friday, and that they do professional development outside of the normal school day. And I was wondering, is there any chance you could reach out to the Pine City School District and just see how did they do it, so we're not cheating our children out of basically a week of school? If you consider there's what, 30-some Wednesdays?
36 hours, yep.
7 hours in a school day, 5 days, that's a week of school.
And the calendar committee talked about doing away with that for next year, but with our letters training and the requirements to get the teachers that consistent PD, we're working on a resource, training and solutions. I think for next year, we need to keep that in place just to give those teachers the time to meet that law. The committee talked about the year after, maybe looking at doing professional development a little bit different for the teachers, but I think for next year, especially since half our district or more will be in the letters training, that we should keep that so we have the consistency schedule to give to our staff. I can certainly reach out to Pine City, but we did talk about that as a committee and thought for next year we need to keep the early release days in place to meet the letters requirements, because otherwise we're not going to be able to get our staff trained by the time the state requires us to do that.
And it has been talked about as a PD committee too, about keeping it for next year for those reasons.
So those requirements cannot be met outside of the normal school day?
I would have to pay teachers if it's outside the 182 days, which we could do, but it would be we'd have to budget for that, plan for that. If I put more days during the school year in for teachers, that would be less student days for students, 2 full student days possibly. So there'd be some give and take on that. And we thought we have the model which is working currently to kind of do both. Still get the teachers the training and only impact 1 hour a week of learning.
Would it still be possible just to reach out to Pine City and just see how are they meeting their professional development requirements, and maybe that's something that we could copy and model after?
It's for the letters training, right?
For,
I mean,
for
the
next year,
additional.
That's what we're
this year and
utilizing it
next
for this year and
Yes.
next, yeah. And I don't know what Pine City's doing as far as the state approved 3 different training, opportunities for the READ. We chose letters because our staff, I mean, for one, the field's the best, and 2, our staff was well versed in it anyway, because half of our staff was trained, in units 1 through 4. So we have to take the second volume of it, but, that's one we choose, and it is the most intense, and the longevity of it is there. Again, I don't know what Pine City's doing, if they're doing core, or the other one that's approved. Which I think is much less of a demand on, they could be doing letters too, I'm not sure.
Okay.
So if there are no other questions, I'm looking for a motion to accept the school calendar for 2024-25.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Is there any chance we could delay this vote until next month when we get some feedback from Brian, maybe researching this just a little bit more, how Pine City does it? Or does it have to be approved tonight?
I was hoping to get it approved sooner. Certainly we've done it in February, March. We've done it every different month, almost every year I've been here. SCRED is trying to get the districts to get their calendars done sooner, because they're looking at how to work with their special ed teachers, trying to get some more times. So SCRED is kind of asking all of the districts in SCRED to go a little earlier with their calendars so they can start planning their staff development for special ed teachers. We certainly could wait till February.
I think for next year though, it's a necessary thing to have those Wednesdays for the training, otherwise they won't have their time set aside for that.
I would agree with Angela. I don't know if it would change my recommendation hearing what Pine is, just because of the letters training and what we've already committed to and the contract we're in resource to get that done. But I certainly could wait a month if the board would like me to.
I'm just wondering, how does Pine City get it done without sacrificing student hours, but we can't?
And I think that's something to look at for the following year, because I agree, Wednesdays,
I mean, we're still, how many months until September of 2024? I feel like, why can't we just maneuver now? Why wait another year?
It's an 18-month program to get letters done. And I think if we moved any faster, we would push our teachers.
So
it wouldn't be possible.
So it has to be done between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. It can't be done during a different time of the day.
Teachers are also, we got a grant for this year, so teachers can work outside of contract hours, but that grant expires by, I believe, September of next year. We don't know that we're gonna have other funds to pay our staff outside hours to do that. So we're trying to get as much of that done this year and hopefully pay up front some of that cost for the first part of next year, but we don't know if we're gonna have another grant to help with that. So we're trying to get as much of that done as we can in the next year and a half.
So I would think if we're losing an hour of class time, that there should be a reduction in salary.
The teachers are still working.
Okay. They're not teaching our students. I just have a different philosophy. I disagree with it.
Okay.
We already have a motion and a second.
So we do have a motion and a second. You ready to vote?
Mm-hmm.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
So we'll do roll call. Leo,
Yes.
Janelle,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Toby,
Opposed?
Angela.
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Jody, yes. Motion passes 6-1. Next up is polling place resolution.
Historically, and I didn't realize this, so I apologize, that we are supposed to do this every year, even when we're not scheduled to have an election. And the reason being that if something would happen where we would have to call a special election, that we want to do this polling place resolution. So odds are we're not going to need this, but this would cover the school board by timelines to approve this in case we needed to call a special election next year for any reason. The county said we could still get this in if the board approved in January. So looking for approval on potential polling place resolution if we had to call a special election, which again would be at the Hinckley-Finlayson Fitness Center lobby, second floor, and at Finlayson Elementary School.
Does anybody have any question regarding the polling place resolution? If not, I'm looking for a motion to accept the polling place resolution.
I'll move that.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is the Scred lease.
You may recall either end of last year, very beginning of this year, approving Scred lease for the Pine County Transition Program. That's our 18 to 21-year-old special ed program. Scred is giving all the school boards that work with the Pine County Transition Program an updated lease because the program's using more space. We've had more students and some higher needs in that program where they have asked to use some extra space. We were using that space for some offices. We were able to move some people around to let that happen. For Hinckley-Finlayson schools, because we're the host, yes, we do get billed for that, but then the other school, we get reimbursed for that. So it's kind of a unique funding source that, yes, we do get billed, but then we recoup the money since we're the fiscal host. So for us, it's a net zero. It's not a loss for us. The lease does say for 6 months, because that's the remainder of this school year. We will have a new one for next school year at the completion of this school year that will say 12 months. So recommend approval of that to allow the Pine County Transition Program some extra space in our building due to enrollment and some needs in the program.
Does anybody have any questions regarding the Scred lease? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the Scred lease.
I'll make that one.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next up is pay equity report.
And this is what's commonly referred to as the comparable worth. Every 3 years, our district must report to the federal government our rates of pay for various positions. The purpose of this is it's showing our job ratings and job pay and how that ranks for males and females to make sure that's equal. In order to complete this report, what we use is we have had a long historic relationship with Kathleen Murphy Consulting, and then a committee of our district employees helped this and one school board member, which was Shelley Scaff. Job descriptions are compared to a state match. The committee determines if job descriptions are rated fairly. Individual staff members are given the opportunity to appeal the rating once that comes out. This year there were some jobs that were appealed. The committee then takes those appeals and places any jobs based on that state match, makes the appeals by that rating list. Some jobs are rated lower than previous cycles. Some job description restructures or appeals did result in placing positions on a higher pay rating scale. We had one of those which you approved in the consent agenda, which can result in change to an employee's pay range. Past practice for our district has always been to move those pay ranges up right after the school board approves. So beginning, in this case, if the board approves, that would begin tomorrow. And after the committee meets, our consultant then runs the pay equity system by the federal government via the Minnesota Office of Management and Budget. And there's 3 tests: statistical analysis, salary range, and exceptional service pay. Hinckley-Finlayson passed all 3 tests. You can see what the job entry list looks like for our school district. So I'd be looking for approval on our pay equity report for, I guess, this school year, and we'll do it again in 3 school years, but I'm looking for approval on our pay equity report.
Does anybody have any questions? Now I'm looking for a motion to accept the pay equity report.
Move that.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next up is the master agreement between ISD 2165 and HFEA.
I have linked in the draft master agreement and all the changes. They should be, the old language should have strike-throughs and new language should have highlights in yellow. HFEA has approved, so I'm looking to make a recommendation to the school board to approve the new 2023-25 contract between the district and HFEA teachers.
Does anybody have any questions regarding the new master agreement? If there are no questions, I'm looking for a motion to accept the master agreement.
I'll make it.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is the end of our agenda. I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.